Hello everyone, it's Infinity Gamer here, and in this episode I'm going to be talking about July releases. So in the July releases there was a lot. I'm going to do all of the stuff I received for July releases, even though not all of it is part of the standard July releases. So things like Caskuda versus Maximus, that's going to get covered in here. In fact, that's going to be what you're watching being assembled on the other side. For those of you that, you know, understandably get sick and tired of my face, there's something else for you to look at just in case you needed it. So let's jump into the standard, well, I say the standard July releases. There were actually a lot more here than what I've got to show you. For example, we have the expansion pack for the Military Orders expansion pack, which I don't have, but that's fine. I don't mind. And then Shaolin Warrior Monk expansion pack, which is a nice expansion pack there. Again, don't play Yu Jing, but I love the sculpts. The monks look amazing. Really, really big fan of them. Almost enough to get me in there. So let's get into the first one that I have received. I'm going to go with Yara Hadad, which is because I want to get the units that I'm likely to mispronounce the worst out the way first. So looking at Yara's profile, Intel Ops Mutafawik Officer, I like this one. I don't know a heap about Hack Islam. I am collecting them to a degree, but more because I know I'm going to want to play them one day in the future. And Yara is an interesting profile. We've got, what, it's between 25, 28 points. Those are kind of your options there. MSV2. We've got bioimmunity, which for those of you unfamiliar with that, enables you to choose to take your armor save on your BTS value instead, important because of some recent clarification around whether it's actually a BTS save or an armor save, but you basically take the number for your BTS save and use that as your armor save. It's not necessarily a BTS save. Immunity to shock, religious troop are all fairly standard for like characters, I feel. Got AP marksman rifle is the only flavor of profile that we've got. Heavy pistol with +1 burst. Heavy pistols are cool. I like them. Not as necessarily as scary as like an assault pistol with +1 burst. I'm looking at you, Usha. But at 25 points with some MSV2 that's linkable. Now, obviously 2 of Yara's profiles are lieutenant options. And then one of them is a strategic deployment one with lieutenant, and then you go back to the same points actually, and the same SWC for the non-lieutenant version with strategic deployment or non-strategic deployment if you want to save yourself 3 points. Yara, as I mentioned, I think is a wildcard available, which is really good because strategic deployment works in that I think it's deploy 4 inches, it could be 8. I could probably click on it and find out. But if you're in a link team, everything in that link team then gets the strategic deployment, so kind of like a forwardy deployment thing, which I think is pretty cool. I've kind of prefaced this with I don't play Hack Islam at all. Definitely not assassins or anything like that. And I haven't played against them very often either. So Yara to me looks like a good profile, good lieutenant option potentially in a link, even though that's going to mean that it's definitely not like a pure link. But I think with that strategic deployment, I think a linkable MSV2 is pretty good, especially with like a AP marksman rifle, pretty handy. And those points look pretty good. So from a very ignorant perspective, I think Yara is a great profile. The sculpt itself, which you can see on the back of the blister, pretty classic. I like that there's not much, I was going to say not much going on there, but when you compare it to some of the other ones that we're going to be talking about, it's nice and simple, but classic. No tactical rock here. We have a tactical metal box. Hopefully that appeases those of you that hate tactical rocks, whilst also still enabling a dynamic pose. Next profile on the hit list, we have Bulleteer. We have Armbots. Sorry, I brought up the Bulleteer profile, which is why I jumped, because the Bulleteer is one of them. We also have the Peacemaker and we have the Orcspot. I have been in love with this unit profile since I picked up Military Orders, and these sculpts are so nice. I've got the OG ones in there, which I bought off someone to try and fill that void of playing them so often but not actually having anything that was a suitable proxy. But these are really cool. I like that they've kept a lot of the original elements to it, but have really elevated the sculpt, in my opinion. So even the Orc spot, I've got the old ones there. I like them, but they were they're quite simple, which I didn't mind as an aesthetic. But this adds lots more complexity to them, which I love from a painting perspective, and then how they look on the table. So unfortunately, I think I'm going to be prize pooling this because I already have the models, and it's very selfish of me to have more than I need. But I would be taking these out of the box in a heartbeat if I didn't already have them. That's because the arm bots are really good profiles too. Now, the Bulleteer has come under a lot of flack recently for having a points increase. A lot of people angry at that, didn't think it deserved it, but I think we can maybe now see why it got a bit of a points increase. So let's just run through the profile so that you're familiar with them. So the Bulleteer arm bot is the first one I'm going to be jumping to. For those of you looking at the box, that's this one with the forehead. And it's a repeater. It is 21 or 26 points. You've got a heavy shotgun flavor, a Spitfire flavor. Spitfire comes with 1 SWC, of course. The mimetism -6. Yes, they're big, they're S4, but they mimetism -6, and they can claim cover. And you've got a Spitfire, and yeah, you've got remote presence, which is useful if things go wrong. But the Bulleteer is linkable, and I think it's been linkable for a while potentially, but I'm also aware of the fact that there's a reinforcement version of the Bulleteer, which is a little bit why this whole video is late. Some of you may be going, July releases, that's old news, but with so many points changes, with an update to Army Builder I knew was in the works, with this sort of stuff going on, and with reinforcements about to drop, I did just want to delay slightly to see how this was impacted. And the Bulleteers, or the arm bots, is one that's worth talking about in terms of reinforcements, because yes, you get a Bulleteer reinforcement option in Pano, which is a scary concept for me, because the Bulleteer, it's decent. It's BS12, it has the mimetism, it can have cover. So if you reinforce this in well, with a Spitfire, or even a heavy shotgun if you really want that, if you don't mind about the range so much, that could be concerning. And again, at what, 26 points and 1 SWC for a Spitfire that can start almost at halfway in certain missions, have mimetism. Yeah, I can see, I think that maybe the points increase was, it's not a lot, but I think it was probably justified. The Bulleteer has been a good unit for me historically. I think I've duoed it in military orders with the Montesa Knight, which I think is still an option. So love it. Then we get to the real hateful unit. That's the Peacemaker. I have loved running this so many times, but so many people don't like it. So this has forward deployment 8 inches. It's a bit pricier obviously than the Bulleteer because of everything I'm about to tell you. It's got repeater, which is good if you are doing hacking networks, and then forward deployment 8 inches, worth bearing in mind. You've got the heavy shotgun with Orc spot, and obviously the Orc spot comes in this set looking pretty cool, and a Spitfire Orc spot. The Orc spot comes with a heavy flamethrower. It also has the forward deployment, but it's synchronized peripheral. Now, this thing alone has been worth any points. To be honest, under 30 points, and I still think it's maybe it's worth considering, because having that forward deployment heavy flamethrower and the repeater option, and you can put a Spitfire up there, and again, it's just like it's not tanky, so people prioritize it and they remove it, but I found it to be a nice distraction from maybe something like a Tick Balang or something that I've had in military orders. But the Peacemaker has been well worth the points almost every time, because if it does survive, or if you're going first as a last drop, yeah, it can be annoying for a lot of people. So I love this box. I would be keeping and opening this under normal circumstances, especially as these sculpts look so cool and the profiles are epic. Let's jump to the next unit profile while you're watching some assembly going on. You're watching the assembly for Maximus at the moment. I do want to highlight, I'm going to talk about their profiles last, but I do want to highlight some of the models' idiosyncrasies. Just going to grab it to remind myself. And obviously we've got the Caskuda. So, mostly easy to assemble. You would have seen assembly videos from a whole bunch of other people. The only reason why mine is going to be different is because I'm also going to talk about the profile, which some of those assembly videos don't because it hadn't been released at the same time as this. The Siocast on Maximus is okay. There's a join line down the left leg, which I tried to clear up, but Maximus's sculpt is quite curvy and intricate, so getting rid of some of these mold lines was trickier than it is on some other models. Like, I don't think you'd have the same issues on the arm bots because there's a lot more flat surfaces. Whereas as soon as you get into like really curved stuff like Maximus has, it's actually trickier to get rid of a whole bunch of things. I don't think I struggled with knowing where things went, but that chest plate that you can see here on the front doesn't fit very snugly. I've noticed that Fast Panda, I'm trying to think of who else, maybe that Mr. Shy, I think he's done a video. I might be misremembering though. There's quite a lot of green stuff, especially on, just in case you can see from there, this right hand side behind the head, like this side of the head. I think I'm going to put I might put some green stuff there. Mine doesn't seem to be as bad as theirs, but I did spend a ton of time trying to sculpt it. But there's still a few things I'm not fully happy with, and I need to get the knife back out again. Like, that aside, the base didn't fit super well. But again, it now does, but that's because I went to town on it with an X-Acto and didn't stop until I was happy. And now I am happy, so that's good. In general, I think this is, I've generally been quite a big advocate for Siocast because it's easy to, I find it easier than white metal to find the flashings, to take out the imperfections. It's easier to see the imperfections, but I think when you get a bad sculpt, it's then more obvious where the imperfections are, so it probably looks as though there are more, has been my defense of Siocast to a degree. This one was maybe not the best sculpt the cast I've ever had for Siocast, which is a bit of a shame because it's a cool model. Then the Caskuda, which you'll see the assembly of after Maximus, wasn't as bad in some areas because it's bigger, flatter panels, so it was easier to clean up without any of my mistakes being exacerbated. But I did struggle with the gun. That had quite a big mismold line or a mold slip, which I fixed because it was because this is bigger scale, it's easier to get in and sort it all out. But that was definitely one of the worst Siocast sculpts I've seen, was that gun, and it did look as though there had been like a mold slip or something because nothing else was as bad as that, so it looked like a bit of a one-off. Same sort of thing, the legs have got fairly big cast lines down them, but are easier to get rid of. You'll see that in the video quite a bit, but there's also some areas that I've missed that now that it's assembled I can see slightly better. I have thought about whether Siocast is great a lot recently. I can't remember why it came up so much. I think I've just went through a flurry of models that are Siocast, and I think I'm excited for Unical because, hear me out, this sort of thing being metal would be a pain for me. Like, it would be too heavy, I'd drop it and it would bend, and there's so many bits that once bent I wouldn't be able to get back again. This model in metal, not as bad. Still chunky, but because there's less sticking out and less extra bits, less likely to bend anything on this. So definitely for certain models, Siocast is better than metal in my opinion. However, Siocast is not quite there consistently enough. Like, we're a year and a half into the process and there's still a couple of issues that I don't think are CB's fault. I think it's a fault of Siocast as a process, or I think CB basically have tried to get it as good as they can, and knowing CB as being quite good at trying to be as good as they can be at things, I'm thinking this might be as good as Siocast can be, and sometimes there's better sculpts. So I've received flawless sculpts where others have then shown photos of sculpts that have been not very good at all. So there's that lack of consistency that I think makes Siocast problematic for CB. While individually, I've had some fantastic sculpts and you've seen them in previous videos and I've really applauded the quality of Siocast. I think if you can't guarantee that every person's going to receive that level of quality, then that's a problem. And I'm hoping that Unicool is a bit more consistent than Siocast for that. Jumping on to Phoenix, staying with, well, on the Aleph kind of thing. Phoenix, big, bearded, gorgeous hunk of a warrior that this one is. Tactical pillar, for those of you sick of tactical rocks. Looks kind of metal. I want to play Aleph. I have collected almost all of them, but I haven't actually played them. I've been beaten by them many times. So one of the things that I hate about Aleph is the prevalence of mimetism -6, plus armor, plus decent like CC, BS, everything like that. And Phoenix doesn't look to be much of an exception to that. We've got mimetism -6 in place, we've got dodge plus 1 inch, and they're dodging on 13s. We've got NWI, so even though they're only 1 wound, they're kind of 2 wounds. Martial Arts level 3, CC 23, heavy rocket launcher, nanopulsar, smoke grenades. I find the smoke grenades interesting. And also Phoenix has the Myrmidon keyword, so it can go into a Myrmidon pure core link, which would be quite nice. Present anywhere else? No, isn't in the reinforcement set. I did check that. I, again, don't know enough about list building to go, well, would you include Phoenix? Like, is that good enough? I like the heavy rocket launcher though. But the fact that they have smoke but don't have MSV, and I know that Atalanta has MSV, but off the top of my head, I don't know enough about Aleph to know, well, would you put Phoenix in there to be doing heavy rocket launcher when there's not smoke, and then you put smoke down and let this thing shoot through? So interesting. 35 points is, to me, one of the issues I always have with Aleph is how expensive their good units are. Phoenix is one that I would love to keep and put in my army, but until I start building lists of Aleph, I don't know if that's actually one that would get used a lot. On to the next unit. Where is it? Bakunin expansion pack box. Obviously empty, because I'm leaning hard into Bakunin and I've played a few games with them. And in fact, the reason why everything's such a state is because I'm actually trying to get my Bakunin painted. You see, I've just done my Stigmata in my test color scheme of an orange. And then we've got these that are assembled, are primed, and are ready to get the paint. In terms of the unit profiles, however, we have got 3 in this box. We've got the Initiated Observant Hacker with the boarding shotgun, Initiated Observant with boarding shotgun, Orphan of the Observant with multi-marksman rifle, which is the one that I used first off when I actually first played Bakunin. There's a few things I like about the Initiated, which I'll focus on first, and I haven't used them as much as I should. They're only AVA2. They're 21 to 25 points depending on which flavor you choose. They've got a parachutist option, which I find really interesting. Kind of like a parachuting nun, sounds quite fun. But it's actually, I think, the camouflage, single use and infiltration version that is the one that I'm going to be using a little bit more in some of my lists. Also because there's a deployable repeater mine layer version, and I'm trying to make my Bakunin list quite hacky and lean into that for nomads. Mimetism -3 on them is quite nice. They've got a nice little armor too, which isn't too bad at all. But I like the idea of having a camouflage token with an SMG at roughly the halfway line, having deployed a deployable repeater for zone control for only 21 points. So this box I love, and if you're a Bakunin player, I think it would be good to get, because you'll probably be running at least 1 Initiated, maybe the 2, using the full AVA if you've got the points to do that. And then we jump into the other unit that's in there, which is the Orphan. So the one that's in the pack there is the MSV2 multi-marksman rifle, which I have taken in a Harris with not the Stigmata, the Penitent, and a Cenobite. Another great profile. So that is a Harris for Bakunin that I love taking, the Observance Harris, Orphan, Penitent, Cenobite. And yeah, I took the multi-marksman rifle with MSV2 beforehand, but I think I actually prefer the Engineer Repeater EM Mine Gizmo Kit version, because the Engineer, great for profiles, no, not profiles, for missions. SMG is just nice. The EM Mines is handy if you're coming up against, you know, other tags and heavy infantry. Decharge is useful for so many missions and also for just killing stuff. Mimetism -3. So yeah, that Orphan of the Observance I like. I think we got 1, 2 in the main Bakunin pack. So that's nice to actually then have the MSV2 version, because I can see a few people leaning in towards that. So great set there for Bakunin. Let's jump onto the next pack, which I haven't got open here because I don't need to, because it's these. It's the Morat's expansion pack. A couple of things I love here. So I've already got the Praetor sync that comes with the OSNAT, which I typically use as the FTO version, because I'll run the OSNAT FTO with either 2 Gakis or a Gaki and a Praetor, depending on points, and that's 3 regular orders. There's Smoke Grenade Launcher, which is great cover for the Gakis and the Praetors to get up and do stuff. Then we've got the Tirok Hunter, which, if you recall, was, I think, the exclusive mini in the Morat launch, which is very cool. I think it was no. It's cool, it's really cool. I've got it there. This is a nice expansion. But I love this Skurgot Jaw Brute. The model for that, I think it's mostly because of how it's painted. Like, the paint scheme on this thing is so cool. I mean, who doesn't love a mini dinosaur just like following around? And the paint job is just epic. I want to copy it. I know I can't because I'm not that good, but wow, that's such a cool little model. It's a shame I never ever used that profile, but it's gonna be kept despite how weighty this is. This is, or is it? I can't remember now. Maybe I do want to. I don't know. Then we jump across to the Caskuda Maximus. This is some really cool stuff here. I'm absolutely loving it. Obviously, part of the set for End Song, it sits here. Then we've got the HVT for Bakunin. I'm mad at Corvus Belli that this is an HVT, because the sculpt is so cool. It's just so cool that it's a bit of a waste that it's going to go on the table, but it also looks like an actual unit, which is a little bit of a criticism that I've made a couple of times of Corvus Belli's HVTs. I think the one that came for the Morats actually looked like a unit, and while I like it to a degree, because it means that you can basically use your HVT as a proxy, because it looks like any unit, I also don't like it because you can use it as a proxy, which means it looks close enough to actual units that it could potentially confuse someone. You know, if it's in there, someone might, obviously you can ask and someone has to tell you that it's an HVT, but I think just visually looking at it, it actually looks like it's on the battlefield as a trooper, whereas I liked the Helena of Troy HVT, I liked Dragon Lady, because they don't look like units, they look like targets, and whereas this doesn't look like a target, this looks like it's coming to mess you up. But that's, you know, again, just me. Oh, and then we've got the Extra, or the EXO, which is part of the End Song kits, which is the Combined Army bad guy? Am I giving too much away? No, I don't think I'm giving anything away as per usual. And then we've obviously got the End Song book, which hopefully you would have seen the lore reading from this if you want to. But then we've got Maximus and Caskuda, which are obviously part of this set. They're cool. I've spoken about them already. I've shown you the assembled models, but let's actually have a look at the profiles, starting with Maximus. So I'm starting with the I'm going to start with the non-reinforcement version of Maximus, and then we'll talk about the differences between the two. This is beefy. I got criticized though for saying, oh, is he a bit expensive for what he brings? And then got smacked down and was like, 71 points for a tag is not expensive for one, and then you look at the unit stat line, and I think I'm just spoiled by having things like the Tick Belang sitting in like a 60-point range. We saw at 58 points, we've got a really cool tag who's going to escape me as to what that is, but it's Stigmata is only like a 58-point hacking tag, and it feels like that's quite good value. Then we look at Maximus, and yeah, we've got great stat lines, 6'4" movement, we've got CC24, which is great, BS 14 is pretty good, PH 15, which almost doesn't matter though, because all the times where you do want high pH, you've got modified down results, generally. Whip 13, Armor 7, BTS 6, Structure 3, and that's a lot of the highlights. Then we go ECM Guided -6, just to counter all of those people that don't like guided missiles. BS Attack +1 damage, CC Attack +2 damage, Courage, Dodge +2 inches, Dodging on PH 13s, which is actually not too bad. Gizmo Killing on PH 13, which is good for a tag. In both of those instances, well, in Dodging for most tags is on an 11. So definitely Maximus getting a bit of a boost there. Immunity to criticals, immunity to shock, immunity to possessed. That's ruddy cool. Just the immunity to criticals is nice. Immunity to shock is standard for most tags, for all tags. And then immunity to possessed is super cool. It makes it like an avatar hunter, which is lovely. Natural Born Warrior, Tactical Awareness. 71 points for either. Maximus can be a lieutenant. We've got a multi-marksman rifle with +1 burst. And then we've got Panzerfaust, which is actually, I think, going to be a cool weapon to be using on this. And then AP plus DA CC weapon, so both. The pilot for Maximus is an interesting one. This might be a mistake, but on the vanilla version of Maximus, the pilot is medium infantry. And then the reinforcement version, the pilot is heavy infantry. But again, could just be an error. I can't imagine why they'd be different, but maybe there's a reason behind it. But yes, different. If that's right, then that's good. If it's not, then probably get corrected soon. But in terms of the pilot, good stat line, great stat line. CC23, BS12, PH12, Armor 3, BDS 3, good CC attack, good dodging. Yeah, interesting. I'm just so question about where this pilot is. Is Maximus's head the pilot? And then he's basically just wearing a ton of armor and like mech gear, because in most instances when there's a human pilot, which this one is, you've got arms and legs. You've got arms and legs sticking out of the tag itself. So yeah, I'm just curious. It is a slightly small head on big armor, but who knows? Not me. Then the reinforcement version of Maximus, slight differences here. You can see that because we have a version that is more expensive. So we've got Maximus for reinforcements. There's a chain of command version. Now, from what I've read of the reinforcement rules, it seems as though if you've got chain of command but they're in reinforcements and off the table, they might still work. So that would be quite interesting. I don't think there's anything different in terms of the stat line, but there is that chain of command version instead of the lieutenant version. And obviously it's 5 points more expensive. And then the only other difference as well, again, that I've spotted is something in, so the pilot, heavy infantry, medium infantry. And then I think that's the only real difference, although no pilot. I think, so that's I couldn't figure out, I was flicking between the two and I couldn't figure out why the text under Pilot Maximus looked longer than on the vanilla version than the reinforcements version. And it's because it's lost the pilot keyword, which again might be an error because it's Pilot Maximus. So I'm assuming it's going to be a pilot. So yeah, well, we'll see whether those differences are intended or if they're just omissions at the moment. And then we go to the Caskuda. We do have two different flavors of the Caskuda. The first one is the vanilla version. This is kind of going to be around a similar theme to Maximus as a bit of a spoiler. We have the Caskuda WCD Armored Jump Operator. The hint there is Armored Jump. So the vanilla version gets the ECM Guided -6, got BS Attack +2 damage, Combat Jumping on a PH 14, Combat Jump Explosion, which I love. We've got that in the Drop Suit Tarlock in Morats, and I've done it just for fun, but the PH hasn't been as good, so there's actually a chance of this being used. Courage, dodging on a PH 11, Gizmo Killing on a PH 13. Oh, that's nice. But yeah, dodging on a PH 11, as you can see, more standard than what Maximus is doing. Immunity to shock, remote presence, tactical awareness. And then we've got the ancillary unit, so like the remote presence pilot, which has courage, immunity to shock, pilot, remote presence, and specialist operative. This coming in at only 64 points. There's a combi rifle AP. I love saying combi rifle on something like this. That sounds rubbish. AP. Chain rifle with +1 burst as well. I quite like that one. I love the combat jump. But then we get to the reinforcement version of the Caskuda. I take back what I made a big deal out of in the first one. Reinforcement Caskuda WCD armored jump operator without the jump bit. So interestingly that they kept the name the same for the reinforcement version. Bearing in mind the key difference here is that it loses the combat jump and obviously then the explosion for the combat jump stuff. But everything else seems to be pretty much the same. But we get 11 points off as a result of losing that combat jump. Yeah, we're still dodging on 11s, we're still gizmo kitting on 13s, we've got combi rifle AP, chain rifle +1 burst. So yeah, quite a bit cheaper, but when you've got the reinforcement version, you've kind of got safe combat jumping, because like some people do take combat jump, but they don't like to do it in the opponent's half without controlled jump, which is the support wear. That's probably the wrong terminology for it, but the Evo hacking boost that you can give anything that's combat jumping. And if you're not doing it, then you're suffering a minus, I want to say 6, but I think it's only -3. I think you're suffering a -3 to try and combat jump into the opponent's half. Whereas some people will safely do it. To be honest, most people parachute in because that's guaranteed entry. If you're going to combat jump, if you do it in your half, then you suffer fewer mods, but it still might not be guaranteed and you might be starting back. So whereas at least with reinforcements, I'm kind of leaning onto the idea that the reinforcements version of the Cascuda is maybe slightly better, because you're guaranteed to come in where you want to. You're still forward, you're still definitely in a range that's going to annoy a lot of people. You lose the explosion, yes, but you're definitely going to be coming in where you want to be. So those are the unit profiles from the July releases. I've covered off all the ones I received, and we've spoken about some that I didn't receive, but are cool, like the Shrouded Monks and the Military Orders expansion pack. I am excited to give these a go. I'm excited to give reinforcements a go, and there will be a reinforcements rules video coming soon. I spent all of today really trying to digest it, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time digesting it and then give you a rules breakdown of the new reinforcement rules. But I'm excited to hear what you think of these July releases and the end song stuff. Have you managed to, have you got the book? Have you got any of these models? Have you got the packs themselves? What do you think? Are you excited for any of the normal July releases? Which ones are you most excited for and why? I thank you again for watching this video. It's always appreciated, and I will be back soon with another one.